Hi, my name is Kathryn Lancioni, and I'm happy to welcome you to another edition of the Education Conversation. I'm joined today by Jessica Bush, who runs the Tutor Doctor of North Jersey and Westchester. Um, Jessica, we haven't had one of these in a long time. How has your winter been?
I know it's great to be back having a conversation.
I know.
Good, busy as we transition, into back into full-time school again, which is great.
Yeah, it's so nice to see the kids back in school, even with masks on and a little bit of social distancing mixed in there too. But I have to say, like,
Absolutely.
I think it's been so healthy for everybody. So, one of the things that I've been experiencing over the past couple of months is the college admissions process. I have a child who's, finally finished up the applications and some of the interviews, and we're just waiting to see where they go. So we thought today that we would talk about the college admissions process and the changing nature of the college admissions process. I think, recently everyone probably saw at least the news headlines about how the SAT is radically changing their test and their format. And, many people are wondering, what ACT is going to do. But Jessica, why don't you, when we were just talking about this before we hopped on, why don't you talk about kind of, high level for us, the changes that SAT has announced and what that means for kids who are going to be taking these standardized tests in the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know since that article hit a couple days ago, there's been so much chatter and questioning about it. But it is going to be changing, and it's going to, I think, change the landscape, and it's reacting to a lot of the, colleges going quote unquote test optional. But it's going to be digital. It's going to be uh, there's going to be algorithms. So there's going to be the reading section especially is going to be react to how people answer certain questions. So it's a whole different ball game. It's going to be 2 hours instead of 3 hours. So it's going to be significantly different, which a lot of people applaud. We have to see how it goes. I'm not going to say I'm hesitant about it, but if we all remember last year with how the College Board handled the AP test, it was really challenging and there were a lot of really anxious, upset kids. So I hope before they launch this in 2024, they really do their testing and their beta testing so that kids don't get more upset and anxious by it. And the question is, how are they going to handle some of the districts that don't have the technology? You know,
Yes, yes, yeah. I think that's a huge issue. And I remember the other significant headline I saw in that story was they're going to allow the compute calculators for all sections of the math, which I know is
it'll be
a big change.
integrated into the online system, which will be interesting, which will be
Yes,
good. Yeah.
yes, yes.
If
You know,
they can
it,
get the whole thing to function, it will be positive.
well, and I think it brings up an interesting just conversation in that, again, having gone through the college application process this year, when you're applying to each school, you have to make the decision right now as to whether or not you submit those test
Submit
scores.
or not.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I have to say that it's been challenging because in some cases, if you're 1 point below the middle 50%, your natural tendency would be, you know what, I'm going to submit them because I'm so close. But what
Yeah.
every college counselor and every college admissions person will tell you is if you're below the middle 50%, you don't turn them
Do
in.
not.
Right, because that gives the school or the university um, a reason to not accept you. Whereas if you're in the middle 50% range, submit. If you're not, don't. So it puts the burden on the student and the
Yes.
parents to
It's a big
probably,
decision.
yeah, to go and check that common data set for every school. And it's not always easy to find. And most kids apply, not all, but most kids apply to, a dozen schools. I think it's about the average. So you really, really need to do your homework before you push that button on the Common App to make sure that it makes sense to submit either that ACT or SAT score. And
Absolutely.
what's
And I
right?
sit
And
with
what's
kids and I tell the families, that's why practice tests are so important for us to find a baseline of where are they at. And then if they're going to choose to do test prep, many families in this area, they still want to do test prep, but sometimes, to be totally honest with you, it doesn't make sense. It depends on where your practice tests are at. It
Well,
really
that's right.
does.
That's right. And the other part of this too, and if you go into the common data set, you can see this with each of the colleges, is Some schools, like only 20% of the kids are reporting their ACT or SAT scores.
Right.
So if you're below that 50% and a school only has 20% of their people submitting, there were 80% of the applicants that didn't, which I just find really, really fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Yeah,
And that's what's happening. But our little microcosm of demographic, here in Essex and Bergen County is not the same as the rest of the country.
no.
Very, very different. And when I sit with parents and I tell them, well, do you know what the national average on the SAT is? And then I tell them, they're blown away because our microcosm up here is not the same.
So Jessica, what is the average on the ACT and SAT for this year?
It's about a 1080 versus the 21. And
Wow.
that's the national average. So the 80% that are not submitting them,
That's right. That's
they may
right.
not have even taken them, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Because I have students that at this point, and COVID has skewed so many things, because I have students that may be a 3.9, GPA, but they come in with a standardized test, like baseline practice test of sometimes under 1,000. So
Wow.
yeah. So what does that say? That could say very many things. That could say they're very poor standardized test takers. They get test anxiety. There are major gaps maybe in their math. There's so many elements to determine. And if we have a student who comes to us early enough, we can work really hard on getting that test score up. But there's one key element. The student has to be willing and able to work hard, because you can't just wave a magic wand and all of a sudden have a test prep tutor or a test prep, program, and the score will increase.
Well, and I know
Before anybody that guarantees that that's
right.
going to happen, I have to say there's one major element, and that is your student.
Yes.
Is your student
Yeah.
willing? We have students that do 10 plus practice tests. If they're willing to work that hard and be that diligent and have the grit to get through that, they can increase their scores to that extent.
Yes, I know from personal experience. My child's, ACT scores went up 11 points from when when we started to when we ended. But there was a lot of time that was invested in getting up by this 11 points.
Absolutely. And a lot of practice on their own part.
That's
Practice
right.
and practice tests. They have to
That's
be
right.
willing to, and able to manage their time, especially in junior year, when there's, if you have honors and AP classes and strenuous, course rigorous courses, you have to be able to manage the time to make time for test prep. And that in itself, in some cases with some students can be a challenge. So it's a balancing, especially now.
Oh, absolutely. And the other interesting part of this whole college application thing is the whole interview. So I know from personal experience, there had been this discussion pre-COVID that the interview was going away, that it was sort of out of vogue to do it. But and I still think that holds true for large universities and colleges. But for the smaller schools, especially the liberal arts schools, they're offering interviews. And
Which is
again,
great.
and it's great because I think it shows the college or university that your child is interested. It's a great way
Right.
to express interest. And these days, you do it from the comfort of your home. And I don't think that's going to change. And we had a mix of
Yeah.
talking to folks from who were alums of whatever college or university it was, and also people that were part of the admissions team. And it was great because not only did it give the school the chance to learn about, just give the school the chance to learn about the kid, but it also gives the kid the chance to learn about the school and to ask a few additional questions that they didn't get to ask when they went on a tour or had a virtual information session or something like that.
To have a personal connection with somebody there,
Absolutely. It's a name.
which
It's really, yeah. And
is so
I think,
important.
yeah. And I think all these schools boast that they do a holistic review. Um, but I don't believe that's true for some of the big schools because it's virtually impossible if you get 100,000 applications to do a holistic review of everybody. But I think with the smaller liberal arts colleges that they do it. And when they have heard the story from the mouth of the applicant,
Of the student.
it is
Absolutely.
so much more compelling. No, regardless of how good the essay is. it's so much more compelling than just reading it on a piece of paper. So, I think for people that are watching this and might be going through the process or will be going through the process in the next couple of years, it's super important to capitalize on any opportunity you get to personalize and bring to life the
The
application for your
application
student.
process. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's incredibly important. And and some parents will say, well, my child doesn't like to talk to people, or my child doesn't interview well. It's okay. Like, you can work with them, you can coach them, you can just sit across the dining room table with them, on a weekend and just talk about, okay, how would you introduce yourself? How would you answer? What are three qualities that you like to share about yourself? What are you the most proud of? What's one thing that you want me to know that isn't on your application? Like, you can practice this stuff at home.
Right.
And that way, when your child does have the chance to interview, there won't be that nervousness. There won't be that, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to do it," because it's so incredibly important. Because there aren't, from what we experienced at least, there wasn't any school where it was required. There were a couple schools where it was suggested, but it's optional.
Right.
And
But if
as
you
a
have a
parent,
suggestion to do it, do it.
that's right.
And
That's exactly.
similarly that you have a student that, my daughter applied, through for into the arts program, and she had a portfolio. And the
Yep.
schools that, this was before COVID, granted, but like you said, the students that offered her the opportunity to present her portfolio in person, I said,
Yep.
you've got to go. Because not only are you seeing the work, you're seeing the person who created the work. And you're
That's very, very true.
that student is presenting her own work. And I think that's super significant.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other thing that I think is a great point is, if a child has some sort of artistic creativity or ability, be it like something like
Music,
painting or drawing or photography,
dance.
right,
Yep,
or musical theater or dance, do a portfolio, because it gives
absolutely.
the child another avenue to be looked at and
I can
another.
tell you with my daughter, that's what got her the merit money that she was given. The
Yep.
fact that she had the GPA, she had the grades, she had the rigor, and she had that personalized, amazing portfolio. That's why she got the money she got.
Yep. Yep. That's right. That's
That's the
right.
reason.
Yeah, so and that's the thing is, I think, the college application process can be as anonymous or as personal as the
You
applicant
choose to
wants
make it.
to make it. Yeah. And it does take more time to put together a portfolio or prepare for an interview or do an interview. It takes, and then it takes more time right now to decide whether or not I should submit my ACT or SAT scores. But
Absolutely.
it's worth it, because ultimately at the end of the day, you want your son or daughter to be excited about the places that they have the opportunity to go.
You want
Um,
them to be happy and have the right fit for exactly what it is that they think at least they want to do. Or, for like for a lot of kids that are going into the arts, have the opportunity to be in a school where you can also diversify if you
that's
want,
right.
or you can double major, or you can
That's
have
right.
arts and, and chemistry, or arts and biology, or photography and environmental studies,
Right.
which is really important.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, and this is something I was talking to somebody about last night. A lot of students find their major or their career interest, if you want to call it, or their direction at the intersection of a couple of majors.
Yeah,
So it's not like,
exactly.
right. It's not like someone's going to be you can be a straight history major, or you can be a straight film major, or you can be a straight econ major. But maybe it's that intersection of econ and film where you find your passion. Maybe it's that intersection of
Exactly.
photography and environmental studies. And if you're in a curriculum or at a school where you don't have the opportunity to explore,
Right.
you're never going to discover those intersections. And I think the intersection is kind of it's that aha moment for people. And I think
And
it's,
you can find things. And that's when I sit with the kids, I tell them, you have no idea what is offered at some of these colleges and universities right now. It's
yep,
it and you have to go and really ask questions and look and see what different majors are, and you'll be blown away by the diversity of what is out there in the
oh,
world. And
absolutely.
it's
And
exciting. It's exciting.
it is. It is. And I think too, a lot of it also is, there's so much on the websites, on these colleges. You can't just do the major click through and look at the list of academic majors. you need to click on the major and then click through the binders and then click at the multidisciplinary programs and so forth and so on, and look at, do they have a study abroad program? And if you want to major in XYZ, can you do that as part of the study abroad program? You
And
want
do
to,
they have do they have the co-ops and internship
that's
opportunities?
right.
Because those schools that have co-ops, when I remember when we were out looking, blew me away. I mean, the opportunity to have some of these co-op experiences is
Well,
great.
and the other part of it too is how it's involved is the alumni base. That's one of the questions that we've started asking of colleges when we go on a tour or someone's doing an interview. It's like, talk about your alumni base. Like, how supportive is it? Like, everyone says, oh, our alums are involved, but like, how involved are they really? And the best person to ask that is a student. If you have a
The
student on a
students.
tour, a student that's interviewing you, find out, have they had alums come and guest lecture in their class? Do they know of alums who've hired their friends for internships over the summer or over the break? Like, that's really what you want, because that's part of what the college degree is all about, is that alumni network. And I think in many cases, it's one of the overlooked parts of the college application process. It's awesome if you go to a great school, but if you go to a great school and the alumni base just kind of checks out after they graduate, that's not going to be helpful to the student in trying to find a job.
It's a really interesting topic that I think we should talk more about, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, because I have a good friend and colleague who I network with and work together with, and she's a Smith alumni, and her mother's a Smith alumni, and her grandmother's a Smith alumni, and it's just amazing. I mean, it's a family legacy, and the alumni base that Smith College has, from what I'm hearing, because another tutor of mine also is a Smith alumni, they helped her get a job. She now lives in Paris and has this incredible opportunity because of her alumni base.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's something that I think you bring up a really interesting topic that we should probably talk about more.
Yeah, and I think especially for the kids and working with college counselors, the college counselors at the schools are so eager to just get kids placed and to get them obviously placed in great schools where the kids are going to thrive, but there's never that discussion
It's
about,
true. It's
well,
a great topic.
what is the alumni network like? And I know, where I went to college, we have a crazy strong alumni base. And there's sort of like a mind meld when you meet somebody else who went there. And it's wonderful and it's great. Um, and then I talk to friends who went to other colleges and they have nothing like it. They're like, yeah, your like obsession with your college is sort of weird. I'm like, no, I just love where I went to school. Um, but I should say I went to Cornell, just
No,
for those who are like, where did you go? I went to Cornell.
it's
And
an
then you meet another.
interesting conversation
Yeah,
because
right,
I had
right.
an amazing, I went to art school and I had an
Yeah.
amazing um, time there and created some incredible work. But I'm not as an involved. I could be, but I'm not as involved in my alumni network. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
really interesting topic to talk about.
And
You know,
you don't appreciate it when you're 18 or 22, when you're like entering college. You maybe appreciate it when you're 22 and you're trying to get a job. But you certainly don't think about it when you're a senior in high school. Like
yeah,
it's like when someone tells you should set up like an I or 401k, you're like, wait, what? I have to save for when I get old. And then you get old. And you're like, oh, thank God I did that. But it really, it's
true.
kind of the same thing. And so I think for people that are parents or kids that are thinking about the college process and where you want to go to school, it's there's a lot more to think about than just the name of the school. There's a lot more to think about than just like, the quality of their sports teams. Like, it's a whole puzzle. And you don't want to go or steer your kid to go someplace because you as a parent like it. It needs to be the place that your child is
They,
excited about. And
yeah,
and that can be hard. Having been on I think 24 college tours over the past couple of months, there were definitely places that I loved. And there were definitely some places that I didn't like. And the ones that I didn't like, it was very hard for me to not express that emotion when we were walking around the campus, because I'm not very good
but
at
you
that.
really have to. You really
You
have
do.
to keep your mouth shut, parents, because it has to be what resonates with your kid.
That's
I
right.
believe that 100%.
That's
You know,
right.
And they really, in my opinion, have to make the final decision
Yep.
because, of course, within boundaries and within whatever limitations you're going to give them, because every family has different limitations, financially or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It has to be the best place where your kid's going to be happy, because what you don't hear about afterwards is how many freshmen crash and burn and come home
That's right.
because they're
That's right.
not in the right place. They haven't found their place. Um, or they weren't prepared for what college has to offer, you
Right.
know.
They think they want a big school. They get to a big school and they
And they're
realize that
lost. Yeah,
they're lost. They're an ID number on a card. There's like buses they have to take to different campuses, and they can't get the courses that they want, and or they go to a super small school which they also thought they wanted, and like they know everybody around them all the time. I mean, everybody has different needs and
everybody,
wants. Yeah.
exactly.
So it's
And
interesting.
then as a freshman, you may think that you're not, and if you just stick it out and persevere a little longer, maybe that shifts,
Yep.
as you grow as a student and as you learn to be more independent, maybe, because that's what happened to my daughter, maybe that shifts. And now she loves where she is, you
Yeah,
know.
I know someone right now whose child is looking, they're a freshman where they go to school and they're looking to transfer already. I'm like, really? And the child after 2 months just hated it, hated it, hated it. And the mother doesn't think that the child is really giving the college a fair shot. But they've decided that they just want to be out and they want to be someplace that's bigger where there's more to
Wow.
do, you
I
know.
know different things for different, trust me, I've seen almost every type of
I'm sure you have.
situation. But we don't want the kids to crash and burn. We
Yeah.
want them to be happy and successful and find their place and find their people and find what they're interested in and their passion and, thrive. So,
Absolutely. So where do we think, so we have, we have the AP, the subject tests have sort of gone away or become a lot less
yes,
important.
they kind of have.
Uh, Right. We have, SAT announcing that they're going digital and they're changing, so much about the test.
And
I'm
I'm
sure
sure
you've
ACT will follow suit in some
right.
sort of fashion.
So if we look out, like we'll have like our crystal ball here and predict out sort of college admissions in 5 years, 10 years.
Mm,
Um, do we think, so Jessica, do you think, I guess, that most schools will stay test optional? What do you think about that one?
that is what I am hearing.
Okay.
I am hearing that they are, um, except for the more rigorous majors or, engineering, pre-med, sciences. They still want to see test scores and, all of that. But I, you know, I see that out of the box, people, they want to see something out of the box, something that you're doing that's different, that stands out. You know, have you taken that pre-college, even a course or an experience? Have you had an experience that
Have you
has
had a
really
job, for
changed, and
example?
or working? Have you worked? Have
Yeah.
you actually earned your own money? How does that feel to have your own money in your pocket? Independence, perseverance. I really see it. I don't know about 10 years down the line, but I see a couple years, as COVID sort of hopefully simmers down and we get back to whatever the new reality is, that's where they're looking.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think it's super interesting the point you made about certain majors requiring the test scores. That makes sense because I mean, I know a huge concern higher education right now is the loss of learning during COVID, and
Yes.
it's specifically. And I heard this when I was at touring a college where they have a very robust engineering program. They're already seeing now a loss of skills in aptitude in both math and the higher level
Oh yeah.
sciences from
Oh
COVID.
yeah.
And as their faculty is trying to readjust the curriculum to be able to support these kids. And the concern is everybody had a loss of learning for 2 years, 18 months.
Yep.
So when the kids that were like super little, like I won't say super little, but like in elementary school,
Elementary school. Yeah.
when they didn't learn basic math because of COVID, how is that going to affect them in high school? Like, are they going to be able to require, like where my kids go to school, calculus is required before you graduate, as is physics. Will schools still be able to mandate that for this whole decade of kids
I
affected by
feel
COVID?
that the little kids can really not bounce back. I don't think that that's the case. I think that once they get stimulated again, and once they get in a classroom where learning is engaging and they can learn, they can they can what's the word I'm looking for? Bounce back,
Yeah, yeah,
no, I think that it's going to be harder in some cases. This is the first year that we've had more college students needing extra help.
yeah,
Because if you figure you had a brand new freshman who's in freshman year in college right now, I think it's the toughest because they've come out of almost 2 years of junior and senior year in high school in COVID. And
yes,
there are so many, not just academic gaps, there are serious skill gaps. There are executive function gaps. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to manage their time as well. They don't know how to prioritize. They don't know how to take notes.
yes, because it all got lost.
It all got lost. And those skills are so important
Yep.
to be able to manage college.
Oh, I
And
completely
that's what I
agree.
see as going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think anybody that was in middle school up during when COVID first hit, that's where, and that's 7 years of kids, like it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and people are going to have to kind of adjust expectations, I think, a bit. Um, I think you're right. I think a lot of the schools will remain test optional. I mean, I know, that my alma mater is running a pilot program for the next couple of years where they're going to stay test optional at least through 2024, if
I
not
think
beyond.
that's a good idea to run these pilots and do, stats analysis of what's going on,
Yes, yes, yes. And I know what,
as the years go by.
that's right. 'Cause
But
I think there's some people that just don't test well. And I think that's always been someone's kind of like
and
Achilles
even to be
heel.
honest, through COVID, you see more anxiety and more uncertainty with students, and I believe we have to take that into consideration and not necessarily dumb down things, but realize what these kids have been through, especially middle school, high school kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I would
Yeah, I
love
think
when we post this, I would love to hear, people's feedback of what kind of conversation that they're thinking and they want to talk about. Because, between your experience, my experience, and I'm sure everybody out there, we've got a lot of interesting and things are shifting almost every day.
well, and I think pardon my barking at the dog in the background, but I think they're going to continue to shift, and I think they're going to continue, and I think
Absolutely.
things are going to shake out, hopefully in as I keep using the word, reimagined way, because I think that there are lessons learned from the whole COVID experience, be they for kids, be they for parents, be they for teachers, be they for administrators. We've all learned something, some good stuff and probably some not so good stuff. But it's a very, very important time to not try to get back to what was reality.
Right.
Try to
Right.
reconstruct
For,
reality in a way that supports people and supports kind of where society is going forward. I mean, society has been altered forever because of this whole thing. Everyone always jokes about, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks, then it was 4 weeks, and it was 6 weeks, and now it's 2 years.
I know.
Um, and I just think that it's nice that things maybe seem to be settling down. I know I think everyone we know has had COVID at some point, at least as of so far, everyone that I've spoken to. Um, and I think that everyone just wants to move on. And I get that and I understand that. But I think, if you're a parent who has teenagers or tweens, it's been a tough 2 years. And I think it's important, whether you're going through the college application process, have a child who's entering ninth grade, has a child who recently transitioned into sixth, like these are all ages of kids that are already so delicate, but they've
Absolutely.
become even that much more delicate and fragile because of COVID.
100%. And I
Right.
just want to put something out there before we end. We are just starting to sort of partner with, I have found this amazing assessment. It's a cognitive assessment that we're going to start to offer to some of our families, where it's not academic, although there is an academic component once we analyze the cognitive um, assessment part of it. It really can show how your kid's mind works. It's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
It's
That's very, very cool.
so I've done it so far with 2 test kids that we've been at 7th graders that have been with us for a while, and it's really fascinating. So I would like to share that with you, and then maybe we could share that at some point, talking about how
Absolutely.
cognitively it it affects everything of how your kid's brain works. And if you understand that, there's even a way, if we can give them this assessment in 9th or 10th grade, it will determine, based on how their brain cognitively works, which test is better for them, SAT or ACT, without them even taking a practice test.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I want to put that out there, that it's something we're in the process of just sort of starting to to learn about and put out there to some of our families. And
Okay.
ultimately, I would like every student that we onboard to take it. And this way, the tutor and the parent has a better understanding of how their kid's mind works and why maybe he's so fast paced. Why maybe he cruises through math and figures things out in his head and has a really hard time slowing down and showing his work, because that's how his mind works. But that
Right,
kid
right,
needs
right.
to understand, and there's skills now that we can use with him to help him develop a way to slow down, learn how to pace yourself, understand why you need to shift that way of your mind working in order to learn algebra,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know? So
That's
it's
right.
really, I just wanted to plant that seed that cognitively is really, really important right now to understand why, why our kids' minds are doing what they're doing. And
Right.
are there skills out there that we can help them, even at home, to practice, to help them develop their weaker cognitive skills and build them into more stronger skills?
That's great. It's great stuff. So it sounds like the next chapter of the education conversation might be focused on this stuff. Excellent. Well,
Thank you
I
so
want to
much for
thank
having
everybody.
me, as always.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And so, Kathryn from Presenting Perfection, Jessica Bush from the Tutor Doctor. We look forward to having some people hopefully watch us on social media. And stay tuned for the next education conversation. Bye-bye, everybody.
So, bye, everyone.
Are you there? Okay.